Hello, welcome. Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 2, Emergence of the Discipline, Issues and Themes. We are going to start this unit. In the previous unit, Social Background and the Emergence of Sociology in India, we learnt that in India the emergence and growth of sociology as a discipline bears the imprint of Western sociology. Sociology as a science of society studies social institutions, social groups, social processes, and organizations. It emerged in Western society out of a socio-historical background which had its origins in the Enlightenment period. This period embodied the scientific, technological, intellectual, and commercial revolutions in Europe on the one hand and the French Revolution of 1789 on the other. The Enlightenment period stretched from the 14th century to 18th century and had given rise to forces of social change which rocked the feudal monarchy as well as the church in Europe. The Industrial Revolution in England, which was the result of the technological development which had taken place during the Enlightenment period, brought about deep-rooted changes in the nature of society and the role of the individual in the society. It gave rise to mass poverty, social evils, and cultural problems. All these events gave the scholars and thinkers of that period reason to develop a science of society which could deal with these problems, find solutions, understand the nature of these problems, and ameliorate the condition of the poor masses who were living a life of abject poverty, crime, and delinquency. Besides formulating the idea of social progress, these scholars also realized that poverty and its related social evils were not providential but had its roots in the forces of social change which the Industrial Revolution in England had set in motion. Thus, the idea that poverty was socially created and could therefore be removed came to be accepted. Here in this paper, we are going to discuss more on the growth of sociology in India than its emergence. However, unless we know the social background of emergence of society both in Europe as well as in India, the nature and growth of this discipline will not be clear to us. Now let us move to the point historical roots of sociology in India. Sociology is an humanistic social science even through its aims at objectivity in social observations. It has to take care of ideas and ideals, values and behavior, aspirations and achievements, problems and predicament of human beings in society. It cannot be seen irrespective of time and place since it studies, unlike the natural sciences, the history and culture of societies. But sociologists have studied different human groups in particular historical circumstances and drawn generalizations about human relations from these studies. As we have learnt earlier in Unit 1, sociology is a humanistic science found it difficult to fit into the module of the natural sciences, such as physics, chemistry, and biology. The debate regarding objectivity in social sciences has continued for a long time. However, our purpose in discussing this issue has been to bring to us attention the fact that sociology has developed in different countries in different ways according to their culture, tradition, and historical circumstances. Its development in different countries bears the imprint of particular historical experiences and cultural configurations. Indian sociologists, being often trained in West, were familiar with the basic concepts and categories of sociology as it has developed in West. They borrowed these concepts and categories and applied them to the Indian context. Thus, unlike their predecessors in the West, such as during the 19th century Europe, they did not find the need to struggle hard to establish the legitimacy of sociology as a serious intellectual discipline. But this dependence over the Western pioneers of sociology made the Indian sociologists forget that sociology in the West was an intellectual response, a cognitive response to the problems which that society was facing as a result of industrialization and the type of social upheavals and transformation that were taking place. Sociology emerged as an attempt to come to grip with the new situation which had emerged due to the social changes taking place in Western society, as mentioned earlier. In India, however, no industrial bourgeoisie existed when sociology was introduced. As European colonialism spread, knowledge about the non-European world increased, and the idea emerged under the influence of Darwin's theory of evolution and the Victorian idea of progress that the non-European society represented various stages of evolution. The European societies, it was believed, had already reached the higher stages of evolutionary growth. Thus, the context in which sociology and its kindred discipline, anthropology, grew in India was largely a product of the European colonialism expansion in the last 3 or 4 centuries. Both sociology and anthropology arose in the India as a colonial attempt to understand Indian society and culture. This colonial context is very important in the emergence of sociology and anthropology in India. Bernard Cohen says that with the establishment of the British scrutiny in the later 18th century, the rapid acquisition of knowledge of the classical languages of India by a few British officials, the need for the administrative purposes of knowledge of the structure of Indian society, and the intensification of missionary activities, systematic knowledge of the Indian society began to develop very rapidly from 1760 onward. Three major traditions of approach in Indian society can be seen by the end of the 18th century: the Orientalist, the administrative, and the missionary. Each had a characteristic view tied to the kinds of roles which foreign observers played in India and the assumptions which underlie their views of India. These have already been explained in the previous unit. The British administrative officials, along with the missionaries, made earnest efforts to collect and record information regarding the life and culture of Indian social groups. Some examples are of Dr. Francis, who conducted the ethnographic survey of Bengal in 1807 at the instance of the Governor General in Council Cohen. Cohen mentions that consistent with the relatively half-hourly collection and reporting of sociological information usually embedded in revenue reports or in historical work, the company directly supported surveys part of whose goal was acquisition of better and more systematic information about the peoples of India. One of the earliest and most famous endeavors to collect information was that of Dr. Francis Abdobis, a French missionary in Mysore, wrote in 1816 a book entitled Hindu Manners, Customs and Ceremonies, which is still valuable to scholars of India. He was one of the first to study caste and interrelations between castes. Francis' work in Bengal and Bihar had set the precedent in various empirical studies undertaken by the British officials to collate and publish for official as well as scholarly use detailed information about all aspects physical, cultural and sociological of every district in India, which ultimately took the shape of the Imperial Gazetteer of India published in the early 20th century. These early studies of Indian society and culture were the forerunners of the more systematic attempts in the later part of the 19th century. In 1871, the first All India census was undertaken by the British government. Census as an institution helped collect a vast quantity of information which fell outside the normal purview of the British administrators. In 1901, attempts were made by Sir Herbert Risley to establish an ethnographic survey of India which would develop as part of the census. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.